Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Yocto Project BoF. As a birds of a feather talk, this is, as always, a very informal discussion. It looks like we have lots of Yocto people in the audience. Jeremy? We have a couple of things to discuss today, and I even wrote down what they were. The first thing is, welcome to the Embedded Linux Conference. Is everybody having a good day? Has it been interesting so far? A lot of good talks? A few more people coming on in. Come on in, have a seat. We don't bite until later. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to say that you've probably seen some cameras set up over near the Yocto Project booth. The cameras are the start of a video project that is being done by our what is your title these days? Illustrious Goddess. That's not very descriptive, but I mean, it's not descriptive of what you do. It's more descriptive of kind of what you are. So, look for Apple. Just because it starts with I doesn't mean that it's Apple. So out there, what we're doing is we are collecting some information about people who are creating distros based on the Yocto project. Because as one of the things that we've been trying to do is fix some of the nomenclature, which we've talked about in this BoF before. And a lot of times when people say, I'm doing this project and it's running Yocto, what they don't realize is that Yocto is actually a set of tools that you use to build a distribution rather than a distribution itself, and it creates confusion. And so we're trying to bring peace to the world and alleviate confusion. And so what we'd like to do is, if you're doing this, feel free to stop by the BoF, the booth, BoF booth. The cameras are right outside the door. They're following me.
There were 5 people in this room who are building a distribution that they would agree to say 2 minutes worth about the distribution after the BoF. I would so appreciate it.
There you go. And free marketing. Exactly. And you get free stickers, too. But you kind of get those anyway. So thank you. And we have a few things that we're going to cover, and then just to talk a little bit about what the latest stuff going on in the Yocto project is, and then we're going to be opening it up for questions, as we always do. So the first thing we would like to talk about is a new fancy tool called DevTool, which is part of the Extensible SDK. Has anybody heard of that yet? I'm raising my hand optimistically. This is new stuff that's been discussed on the mailing list, and I would like to actually turn it over to David a little bit to give us a 5-minute overview of what that is.
Thank you. We've been working on this for about a year now. It's to answer a number of questions. The purpose of the DevTool is to create and manage recipes. Oh my goodness. Those things are complicated. If you saw the presentation earlier, it's very powerful but very complicated. So it's a tool to create, manage, as I say, deploy, and to lifecycle your recipes. It works with a thing called a workspace, so it does all your work in a temporary space, so you can have your work separate but included. It's like a local temporary layer that gets included in your builds. It has a most powerful feature is the add feature. You can add a URL, you can add a source tree, or you can add and start modifying an existing recipe. So it really opens the world up to these many different workflows of stuff you've already created, like to bring into the Yocto your project world, stuff that is out there you just want to start editing and it's not part of Yocto yet, but you like to start working with it. Or if that recipe you have is not quite right and you need to modify it to your needs, this is a way to bring it into a safe workspace, start editing it, start deploying it, and start really getting it to the shape that you need it. It has a couple of extra features. There's of course, you can just build it directly. You can also build it into an image. So you say build that recipe or build that recipe into this image. And so you can get a quick little image built out of it, include these special recipes that you're working with. You can also edit it very quickly and directly. It creates all the areas of the recipe, and then you can start modifying from a known space. So it really sets you up in a good place to start. Also very handy is a deploy tool. You can have it deploy automatically to a target. So very much for the trying to optimize the compile, edit, deploy cycle. So you can really move quickly with your recipes, with your work. And it will deploy to a target. You can also have it undeploy in case you need to redeploy a completely different thing or to restore your target to the current existing functionality. It also has a way to extract patches out of what you've done so that you can really then take that forward for the life cycle to extract it to the, your next thing. And as Jeffrey said, it's very much part of the extensible SDK, a very, very powerful SDK. You should learn about that. So, and it's fully documented. You can read about it in the manuals. We've been testing it. We're giving a class section on that at the advanced class this Thursday. Be there. And so you get a chance to try it yourself with experts. So then, in a nutshell, there you go.
Thank you. That was a very good nutshell. Yes, Extensible SDK from Mr. Mark Hatley.
Yeah, so the other piece of this is the extensible SDK. One of the problems that we've had for many years is you construct an SDK and it's pretty much static. So this is the SDK you give somebody. It may contain an image, it may contain a QEMU, but you're really locked down to with whatever the SDK creator has given you. With the extensible SDK, you can now create an SDK that you can use the dev tool in order to augment with new recipes, new components that the application developers created. You can also use new components and applications that may be provided by the SDK creator that were not included in the SDK itself. And you can do all of this without having to rebuild everything from source for your custom Linux distribution. So think of it as an SDK that includes the builder components in order to reuse what somebody else has made available. And so it's kind of a bridge between building everything from source and starting with a binary distribution where you don't have that option to really start from source. So it's a good happy medium there. So the application developers particularly can start with something, a distribution configuration that they know works, and then augment it with their applications, but do it in a workflow format using the dev tool and other components that works with the Yocto project and then can be shared through layers with other people. So that's kind of a quick summary of the extensible SDK. It's certainly something a lot of people, like I said, especially application developers or kernel developers are going to want when they have a very, very targeted focus on the system. So Yocto Project 2.0, it worked mostly. There were still some hiccups with it. A lot of the fixes were backported into 2.01, and as far as I know, it should work in 2.01. In 2.1, which is about to be released, everything works as far as I know. In 2.0, there was not much documentation on the extensible SDK yet. That was mostly the code deliverable, making sure that things go. There's supposed to be documentation for 2.1, but I don't have any idea where it is, so it may come after 2.1 is released. But it is there. Okay.
If you look at the SDK manual and search for extensible SDK, it's there.
Perfect. Yeah, so then there is actually a manual for the extensible SDK now. There wasn't in 2.0, so. But this is really where everything is moving with the SDK, and it really opens up the ability for people to not just use the SDK, but make the SDK usable for what they're doing.
Thank you very much. Did you want to add anything to that?
Hi, I'm Henry Bruce. I work in the, sorry guys, I work in the Yocto team. I was brought on as not having any Yocto experience about 18 months ago to see what it's like for somebody who's new. And yes, it was painful. But one thing hasn't been covered, you can use a dev tool also when you're building images as well. So usually the image creator is kind of pulling everything together, but often in smaller organizations, the responsibility of the image creator also includes tweaking some apps. So you can then run DevTool in that environment as well. So you don't just have to be an app developer using the extensible SDK. But pretty much looks like other stuff's been covered. The other good thing is when you do, as the image creator, when you build the SDK, it used to be this monster thing that was maybe a couple of gig size. If you had a big image, you had to push that to the outside world and keep on pushing it each time you made a tweak. Now, when you build it, it's a small kind of bootstrap installer, maybe 25 megabytes in size. And what you can do now is then when you push that out, You can then publish the core parts of the SDK onto the web. You then point to that and update. And also, if you share your estate, it means your app developers can then build an entire image pretty quickly. And that, I'm now switching from being the image creator now into the app developer. So that's now, you can now create an image, as the other guys have said. But if you have the estate mirror set up, it's fast.
Thank you very much. Any questions about the dev tool and ESDK that we've talked about? Okay. They're going to be available in the 2.1 release that's going to be released pretty quick. They were, I think Mark mentioned that they're in 2.01 as well, so which is out now.
2.1 should be usable, but I would not be surprised if there's some bugs with it. But 2.1, it's all supposed to be there and working. And that's, 2.1 is weeks away, roughly.
Roughly weeks away. Probably very few weeks away, I think. The documentation is part of 2.1, and but the documentation bleeding edge should actually have it. Yeah, the latest. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So they're in 2.0 and documented. So, okay, excellent. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is another new tool coming around called Crops. I believe there's a talk on it, and I'm going to have Tim to talk about it.
Okay. So I'm Tim Orling. I've been around OpenEmbedded for a while, but I am new to Intel. I just got hired in January. So I'm working on the Eclipse plugin for the Crops tool, but let me tell you about Crops first. So Crops stands for Cross Platforms. And so the idea is that you have a container. So Docker containers, if you haven't heard about that, so it's a small little virtualized machine that spins up very, very quickly. And inside this container, you have your toolchain, your SDK. So what does this bring us? This brings us, first of all, we know exactly what the container is. It was very, very, strictly defined what's in that container, only what we wanted in that container, and every single time you spin it up, it's the same, every single time. Okay, so what's the other thing? Containers will run on Windows, they will run on Mac, they will run on Linux. We don't care what you're running. So what this is bringing is we can actually have the Yocto Project tools or any of the other OpenEmbedded stuff actually available for the millennial Windows developers. And apparently, there's lots of those people who only want to use IDEs, and therefore, we are also working on an Eclipse plugin for that. So I don't know how many people have ever tried to use the old Eclipse Pocky plugin, but that was only on Linux. There were some good things, there were some bad things. So, and it's been a little bit difficult to maintain, so that's a little bit of a headache. So what we're doing is we're basically starting over. We are writing a new plugin that is going to run on Windows, Mac, or Linux. It doesn't matter. The source for the plugin is the same for all of them. It doesn't matter. Okay. The containers are going to be something that's we're going to give you examples of how to do your own toolchain containers, and we're going to document how to build your own toolchain containers. So the idea is we're going to give you a handful of things. A regular Pocky SDK toolchain, and we also have Zephyr project toolchains. There will probably be Ostro toolchains and other things like this. But there's nothing to stop you from making your own toolchain container and then giving that to your customers as a nice shippable thing that they can run on Windows or Mac or Linux or whatever other insert the operating system you have is. So it's quite experimental at the moment as far as the Eclipse plugin. The actual Crops itself is working extremely well from command line. We've really figured out a lot of issues with that, and everything's going just swimmingly. The Eclipse side of it has been a little bit more fun because the normal way you want to debug something, for instance, is you run GDB server on the remote target, and you run GDB locally. I am not doing that. I am turning the world inside out. So one of my use cases right now is I've got OpenCD running on my host, talking to the hardware. I'm running Eclipse on my host. But where's GDB? It's inside my container. So I actually have to translate all the paths and all this other stuff to get GDB inside the container, happily talking to OpenOCD, which is really our GDB server on the host. So a little bit too much detail, but this is kind of what's going on. It's very, very exciting, and we're targeting 2.1, but we'll probably have a lot more functionality in 2.2. So yes. Source code. So so the source code is on your host. No, where's your source? Or my source code. So Crops itself is now on GitHub. The Eclipse plugin will be out public when it's a little bit more mature. So it's currently, although it's going to be totally open sourced and everything, it's currently only inside Intel at the moment.
So is it linked from Yocto Project website or something?
It will, yes, it will be, yes. Yes, yes.
Can you walk me through this? I have developers who only want to use Mac,
Mm-hmm.
preferably. So they would spin up this Docker instance, but then do they have to log into that and then understand how to use Linux in order to then?
No. They could. If they're more advanced and they want to, they can. But so basically, we will give them some kind of a installer script that they can run. And they're going to install Docker, and in the case of Mac and Windows, you're going to run VirtualBox or some other kind of virtual machine, which is where the containers are actually running. And then they can use the Eclipse plugin and install that into Eclipse. It's quite easy. Yes, natively on the Mac OS. Correct.
Alternatively, you can make command line wrappers, environment variables, and essentially you can call related to the container and do what is effectively a bind mount to the other side of the container so that you see the same directory. That's what we're doing
Yep.
with the separate client CLI version and the Yocto CLI version.
So you can redefine your own make that is actually going to call into the container rather than run make locally, for instance. That's
Great, because for years, there's been this project to try and to create an SDK that would run natively on Mac OS, but that's been long abandoned.
right. So there's a lot of issues with trying to do all this stuff natively or in distro du jour, right? There's just so many issues with trying to handle all that stuff. The QA stuff gets worse and worse, and so on. And so the fact that we can actually know for a fact what that container is and exactly what's in there and everything means we have a really, really testable, easy solution for that. Yeah. Yes. So so one other thing is that the next part of this that may not be that obvious to you, but containers, where is it going to run? Okay, right now it's running on the host. So anybody do a lot of FPGA stuff that takes forever to build? Where do you want to put that? Somewhere else, okay? Somebody else's machine, which is the cloud, right? Somebody else's machine. So we're going to have it so that you can actually run the Eclipse plugin locally, but have it actually spinning up containers in the cloud.
So the support for the command line wrapper, is that a wish item or is that there?
We've already got examples of the command line wrapper. We are actually going to be moving to a RESTful API to make it a little bit easier for the hosted cloud stuff. So a couple containers or questions over here.
I was going to ask how big the containers were trying to.
What are we at now? Okay. Okay, so the question was, how big are the containers? So they're about 75 megabytes right now. So yeah, So we've had ones that were, in the 2 to 4 gigabyte range, and we knew we couldn't do that, so we made efforts to make them smaller. Yeah. So Zephyr's actually got 9 different host tool chains in it, and so that's really big. That's a special use case. But any other questions? Yes. So currently, no. However, the containers. The question was, are we building this using BitBake? So Crops itself is not being built with BitBake and will not be built with BitBake itself. However, the tool chains are being built with BitBake, okay, and with OpenEmbedded and all that stuff. And in particular, we have, as Brian mentioned, we have some stuff in the works already to build the containers straight out of OpenEmbedded. So you don't have to learn all the crap about, or pardon me, but all the stuff about Docker files and how that works, okay? You don't need to learn that. And if another container, du jour comes along that isn't Docker, and we can support that, then you will be able to build containers for that. And so it's going to sort of be like targeting an image, right? I mean, it's just a container image. Yeah. And so that's already, proof of concept's already there, and that's going to improve. So that'll be another thing we're going to be bringing out to everybody. And this is really what we're picturing, right, is you want to spin up your own tool chain for your customers. And you're not going to want to learn Docker files and all these other things. You just want it to work. And we're also going to be adding a, probably like a JSON file or something like that, where the toolchain container is actually going to host this little file, and it says, here's what I know how to do. Here's what my GCC is. Here's what my, here's what the path is to my GCC inside of me, and all that kind of stuff. And so that way, Eclipse will be able to parse that, or your command line wrapper will be able to parse that file and be intelligent and be easy to use, right? We don't want this to get harder and harder. We want it to get easier and easier and easier to use. Right now we're using Jesse Debian. We're talking about other options, so we'll probably change that. It really, honestly, it doesn't actually matter as long as it's something that your SDK will run in. So you can choose your own if you wanted to. We're looking for size and performance, though. We would like to perhaps even spin up a container just for a build and then destroy it, like just up and down, done. Or maybe you bring it up just for build and debug and then done. And if you've got 2 different cores or 800 cores and they're all heterogeneous, you spin up 800 containers and they all have their own tool chain. It'll work. It scales very, very well. Yeah. We are trying to target 2.1, but it's definitely going to hit 2.2. We have had a few things that took more effort than we expected. Eclipse in particular was one of them. There's some really, really fun challenges that because of what we're doing is so new and so different from what other people are doing. Even when we ask the experts, they have trouble wrapping their head around what we're doing until we explain in detail how things are working, and then we finally start getting somewhere. So, yeah. I think there was another question over here somewhere. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
And is there any possibility of getting early access to that without any wait? Because this is something I need yesterday.
Yeah. So you are not the only one. Okay. So the actual crops container stuff is already public on GitHub right now. Okay. We have done our best to make easy installer scripts for a couple of projects, such as Zephyr Project. Okay. But right now, it's not super, super easy to use for your own thing, and so because all this Docker stuff and container stuff is kind of new to a lot of us. There's a there's some learning curve there as to how it all works and just getting it running. But the good news is we've hammered on it so much that we're starting to figure out what the answers are to a lot of the questions that come up. So. Yeah. Yeah, so crops just really doesn't have documentation. We really need to do a lot of that, and that's going to definitely take till T2. So. Yes. Well, yes. Sorry. Is Docker the only requirement for the host? So in the simplest case, all you really need is to install the current Docker installation on Windows. So that in and of itself is going to install currently MinGW64. So there's some things in there that make life easier. We've been using, what's that? So the container, you actually can pull the container from GitHub or from Docker Hub or that kind of thing. And so there is some download requirement there, but if you have good internet connectivity, you didn't have to have that already. You could have just run the installer script and it would bring it all down for you. We've also been using MSys2 a lot on Windows, and so if anybody has not used MSys2 and you are a Linux person, go out and find it and use it because you will be very happy. It's much better than Cygwin because you can actually install packages inside of your command line, so it's really easy. Anyway, any other questions? Okay, thank you for your excitement. We're very, very excited about this. This is really going to change things, we think. We just cannot bolt the wheels to the wagon fast enough right now. And the demands we're having on our, what can you do this, can you do that, is just really springing forth. So we're very excited about it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So at this point in the BoF, what we usually do is open it up to questions from the audience because we have several of the maintainers here, and this is a great opportunity for you to ask questions. Or any other Yocto project issues that you might have. One thing I do want to also make sure to announce is, in case you haven't heard, we're doing a Yocto Project Developer Day on Thursday after the conference. It is, I think it's $249, and it is a full day of training, and it includes a board of your choice. We have 3 different boards available. The boards will not be used in the class, but we will be discussing how to use them. And so, yes. Friday is the, if you are an OpenEmbedded developer, Friday is the OpenEmbedded Developers America's meeting. OE-DAM. Yeah, no, I'm not going to say that one more properly. That is, it's a small gathering of OpenEmbedded core developers, and we get together and talk about what to do with OpenEmbedded over the next 6 months. It's a 6-month cadence. 4 a.m. No, it starts at 9. So will you be able to make it a little bit? Okay, good. It will be at the Catamaran. No, not the Catamaran. Is it Catamaran? Thank you, Catamaran. We've moved it a couple times. It's at the Catamaran. It's up in Pacific Beach. It's about a 15-minute drive from here. And I will be hosting transportation. I just need to know how many people need transportation. So if it is something you're planning on going to, please come and find me and let me know. So, any questions about the Yocto project? Yes.
Chromium. There are a number of people I know who are doing development on Chromium, and I personally only care about X11. I don't care about Wayland, and Chromium builds for both. But if you take the Chromium sources, you can pretty much grab any version, and it'll build for X, because that's just the way it works. If you want to run Chromium on Wayland,
You then have to add another library, the ozone, which is kind of a HAL layer that sits between the two. And what it is, you have to go to GitHub, you have to grab down this other repository, and then you have to, it's like 300 patches. And you have to apply those patches to the Chromium sources, which are enormous to begin with, and then you try to build. Well, the people who are working on Ozone, of course, every night there's a new release of Chromium. They're not trying to keep up to date with every release. So they literally will pick a release and port their 300 patches to that release, and then say, okay, that's good, wrap it up, release it, ship it, and then you can build Chromium with Ozone for Wayland based on whatever magic number they've chosen. And so I've been working on the Chromium recipes, and a lot of people are saying, oh, push your stuff, push your stuff. Oh, you got it working on the Dragon board, I got it working on Minnow. It's the latest 5200 or release. But again, only X. And so I'm hesitant to push it because I have no idea if it works for Wayland. I don't really care. I don't have the time. Yes, Kem? What I want to do, I want to split it into two recipes. I want Chromium X11 and Chromium Wayland. And then the two can move, their versions can move independently of each other. That's what I would like to do. I think that would be the easiest moving forward. And then those who care about Wayland can maintain the Wayland part, like the Lenaro people, for example. And then people like me who only care about X11 can use, if I want to use last night's or last week's or whatever, then I can, use that. That's what I'm proposing, so that's, Okay, great. All right, yeah. Okay, great.
Long term, it'd be nice if we could merge them into one, but at that point, just use providers and the rest of it, merge two recipes.
Okay, great. I'll work on that. Thanks. Okay, Kahem is one of the maintainers. With Ottavio, they both maintain Meta Browser, and he said it's fine. And then Mark said that that's probably in the short term the quickest and easiest way forward to just do that. So I'll split it into two, and I'll leave the Wayland one where it is, because I believe it works for Wayland now, but it's in the 40-ish, and I've got like a 52 version working with X11, which is fine. So yeah, I can do that. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So Cam's saying if no one cares about Wayland, then it can rot and we can forget about. But I know Lenaro's using Wayland, so I'm sure someone from there will. Yeah. 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 Is the RDK using Wayland? Yeah, okay. Okay. That's why. Yeah. Yeah. And the exception is because of the way it's built, because of that extra library that you need in between. It's not even part of the project. It's like a separate project all on its own. So, yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That's great. If no one else has anything, there's something else I want to talk about. As I've kind of discussed on the architecture list recently, and I'm very happy to hear that other people are interested, so that's great. I would love to be able to move to a world where someone can say, where I can say, oh, I've got an image working on my Raspberry Pi 3, and then of course inevitably, 30 people email you and say, oh, what are you using? What do you got? And stuff like that. And then I have to send them my BB layers file. I have to tell them what's the head of each of the layers I'm using and make sure they get that right. And there's usually a lot of back and forth, And it would be nice to send them one file and just have it work. And ideally, what I would love to have happen is that, like BB layers now, if you haven't checked out the code, it's like there's no mechanism in BitBake or what have you that's smart enough to actually check out the code sort of for you. If it's not there, your build fails. So it'd be kind of great to be able to say, here's my config, preferably in one file, and then it would go through and say, oh, you're using Metapocky. Okay, it's going to go and find, and somehow I'll also encode where I'm getting my Metapocky. Well, obviously, Metapocky is a bad example. There are a lot of BSP layers where there are literally like 5 or 6. You go on GitHub, and you can find 5 or 6 layers that are named exactly the same, and they all allegedly support the same SOCs, but they actually don't. Some support some support the others. And so you need this person's meta whatever if you're using this. Anyway, so ideally it would go and be able to grab, yes, Darren? Sure. Yeah.
I've been wanting to announce this at one of these for years. So this isn't novel, and I know a lot of people use this. I think Dennis has something similar. He and I have talked about this before. But I have a script called BS, and it's the BitBake shell. I've just been wanting to say that for a long time. But it basically uses a JSON file which has definitions for distro and layer and machine, and then a command line that you say BS. And then -M in your machine, -L if you wanted to add a layer, and then you can give it a target, and it can just pull all that stuff together. It puts it all in a defined directory. It uses a defined build based on your configurations, and then it keeps a BYOBU shell open for you, and it'll build in the background that you can go do something else. So I know there's a number of these around, but if there's interest, maybe we should start to consolidate. Oh, it's on the yoctoproject.org Git repository, so if you're interested, let me know.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to ask. But I think the larger question that you are asking here is about projects. We don't have that. We have like combo layers, and then people have their own projects using Android repo and stuff like that. So I think it's a larger question from there whether you want to have a project file, right? Or a tool which can generate a project file for you, some of that, right? I think I'm not sure whether we have like officially taken this as a Yocto project or even discussed it. We have done like combo layers, which was a step towards that, which will do this exactly same thing what you're kind of wishing for. I'm not sure whether it is doing everything what you want to do, but it can probably achieve much of it what you kind of are trying to do here. And then additionally, probably what Darren has is on top of that, it has a lot of management of metadata. So I think it's a good feedback. There is probably no straight out tool there, but something, maybe you can file like feature requests for 2.2, I don't know.
What I would like to is like as part of a CI loop. As part of a CI loop, I would love like maybe part of build history, which is where I was kind of targeting it, but then people were like, no, don't touch build history, we'll like it how it is. It would be nice if if my automated build succeeds, then somewhere it would record all the details in this one file. And then so 3 months from now, if I want to recreate last night's build, you just give it this file, this magic file, and run BS against it or whatever. And I would have a, bit for bit or very nearly a bit for bit exact recreation of that build, 3 months from now type thing. So as part of my CLI loop, every night it would just simply record, what did you? And we sort of have that. There is metadata revs the file and it records, but it doesn't tell you exactly. It just says that somewhere on your system was a meta Pocky layer, but doesn't say where it got it from type thing, so there's that missing piece. Because you could have, you could have meta X, Y, Z, and there might be 10 of them on GitHub, and you won't know 3 months from now which meta X, Y, Z you were using on the build that you did April 3rd, 2016, type thing. So yeah, we're almost there. There's a lot of stuff there, but yeah. I believe the toaster people are interested in that too. Yeah, so that's great to hear. So. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, it sounds like we need to sit down, and I don't know if hopefully here while we're all still here, but it'd be nice to. Thanks.
It's a good idea. I don't know if I need that. I think it's a good idea. You kind of hit on something very critical, which is the idea of CI. Most CI systems already have that capability. So considerations for anybody that's thinking about carrying this forward would be how this would either overlap, duplicate, or otherwise modify that type of behavior in a Jenkins or Hudson or anything else. I would also suggest that probably the most critical part of this is making sure that the format of what, Cam, I think you're right, it's a project file. Cam ran away. I scared him off. So making sure that that's well defined, both in terms of language of choice or format, whatever it might be, and then bound very tightly, or else we're going to run into all sorts of incompatibilities with different project files. So just some comments, some observations.
Just a quick comment. So I'm completely with Sean here, and it's not a trivial issue, and we've discussed it several times before, and everyone has done something similar but differently, right? So everyone has invented their own way of doing things, right? And part of the problem is because everybody's doing their own CI, using whatever the tool they have, and existing methods there, right? So unifying and standardizing on a unified solution is a good thing, but just expect it to be not very trivial to resolve. Yeah.
So one of the harebrained ideas I had about this would be, whatever it is, put in a plug-in mechanism, so that we can actually have a plug-in for Jenkins or a plug-in for Hudson or whatever it is. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but that's my harebrained scheme that solves a little bit about what you're talking about.
That's what we like about the Yocto BoF, lots of harebrained schemes. Okay. Did you want to talk a little bit about Smart? Okay. Come up. Okay. Okay, yeah, you want to show it? Just realized since we're talking about lots of different fun things, this might be another fun thing to talk about. Here we go. The projector? Is it not on?
I would be surprised.
I didn't realize it was off. Ah, thank you. Yeah. I think you're in the union now. There, the magic is starting. I think we've got about 6 minutes left, something like that. We've got a countdown. What do you suppose happens at the end of the countdown? I think I'm not sure I want to know. We win something. There we go. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fan Xin, and I work in Fuji's group in Japan. And today I want to share some experience when we use the Yocto project and we meet some problems. And usually, today I want to talk about the package managers. Usually the distributors, we use the apt or YAM or the DNF to as the package managers. Also, we have the RPM or DEB and OPKG and IPKG as the package management systems. In the Yocto, Yocto is make the customers distributions for the individuals, but for the companies or for the enterprises such as us, we use the Yocto projects and deploy the image into the targets, but the Yocto project can select the recipe files, so it's very flexible. But I think this, at the same time, it will produce the fragmentations. And here is one problems we have made, that usually the Yocto projects has rebuilt every time if you want to produce the image file, but we have some security force. We have to make the fix for some individual packages. So if we have to rebuild the whole system every time, so it's exhausted for the developers. So here I want to introduce the tools called the Smart Pack Managers. It's not news, but it has merged into the Yocto project 1.4. But when we want to use it, we find it's unavailable. So we made some fix and sent the patch to the communities. Here, the Smart Package Managers will use the Yocto projects and use the RPM packages. And we use these tools to try to manage the packages and produce and create the root file systems. So by using these tools, we don't have to rebuild the whole system every time, but just build one time, and then we use this Smart Package Manager to select what kinds of the packages we want to build into the whole root file systems. And here I want to make a demo to show how to use it. Okay. Here I'm. We want to install the Yocto the root file systems into this directory, and we can see we just use a script to configure the environment, but now the directory has nothing. So we use the Smart Package Managers, and we developed the text GUI. And here we can see that there are several install types. Due to the time limited, we select the BizBox based. And here is go to the, it's also that you can select the special type packages. So this time we select the next. And here these tools will select the BizBox-based packages automatically. And you will see the next figures soon, so that we can see that the BizBox related packages has been selected. Of course, you can use a space button to select other packages or unselect it. And then go to the next. Here, the BizBox-based root file system has been created, and it will finish in a very soon times. Here we can see that the procedure has finished, and we can see that in this directory, the BizBox-based root file system has been created. So, for example, now we have the OpenSL has published some fixed the security fix. So we have to build one time the OpenSSL package, and then we want to install the upgrade the OpenSSL package. We restart this smart patch manager, and we just here we also select the busy box based and go to the next. Here we rebuilt the OpenSSL package, and now we search the OpenSSL package and search this one, and now this we can select the OpenSSL package and go to the next. Okay, and go to next. So, so yes, the OpenSSL package has been installed, and we can check it in the USR and lib. So now we can see that the libSSL OpenSSL has been installed. Then I am a regret. So when I want to delete the OpenSSL, we can also use the Smart Package Manager. Here we remove the OpenSSL and use the command line. And it will ask me, will you really delete? And put yes. Okay, the OpenSSL package has been removed. And here, sorry. Yeah, it's unlinked, and it's removed. So I use this to want to say that we try to use this one, but we found there are some problems. Yes, we found some problems, and we fixed this and sent the patches to the community. But this community has been not inactive anymore. So if you also have the same problems and want to solve this problem, use these tools, we need to active the community again. And okay, that's all. Thank you. Thanks for your listening.
Yes, we'll probably have some comments.
Actually, I'll comment on this. I'm actually really happy to see this because I'm the RPM maintainer because nobody else wants to do it. But no, I'm happy to see this, and I do want to see this work because I know I've got people that have been asking about this exact same thing, being able to use the SDKs to be able to install RPM packages into images. But the real reason I grabbed the mic, though, is I've got a request for people. If you or anybody in your company has the desire for pre-link, I'm also the pre-link maintainer because nobody else wants to do it. And something broke between glibc 2.22 and 2.23, and I've spent 2 weeks on it so far and made very little progress. And I could desperately use some help from somebody who knows ELF, knows glibc loader. And so while you guys might not know it, somebody that you know might, and I would love if you could get in contact with me, Mark Hatley or Frey on IRC, F-R-A-Y. The other piece of it is recently, within the last 6 months, Samsung has contributed a bunch of ARM-Arch64 work to the prelinker. We're very, very close on getting it working, and then this glibc thing cropped up and broke it all again. So I'm really hopeful that if we can figure out what the loader problem is in glibc 2.23, and maybe it's a compiler problem and not actually the loader, I don't know at this point, that we'll actually have ARM64 support for the prelinker as well. And I know some people don't care about the prelinker, that's fine. But if you can help, please contact us on the Yocto list or contact me. And I'm desperately looking for help on some of this stuff right now. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think we are getting close to the amount of time. You're ready to run out the door, aren't you? Does anybody have any other questions? Yes.
I think there was, we discussed that, I think. So package signing, is there anything new on that front? Yeah.
So the question's about package signing, of course. In the 2.1 release, there are a lot of changes related to package signing. Package signing is really the first step towards a full system-wide IMA type configuration. You've got to be able to get the packages onto the system and know that they're supposed to be there before you can go through the rest of the process. On the RPM side, there is a lot of automated signing mechanisms that are there. You can either sign the stuff on the build machine itself, or there are instrumentation to be able to use the OBS type remote signing. I don't want to use the remote OBS stuff because I'm not an OBS fan. However, the interface happens to be just fine. So in my own code, I'm planning on using the interface for the remote OBS to sign it through our remote mechanism that we've implemented. So just keep in mind when we say OBS, you see anything, you don't actually have to use the OBS signing mechanism because it has its own issues. O-Package recently, within the last bit, has had signature stuff added to it as well. I'm not terribly familiar with that. Debian stuff in the last year and a half has made some good progress on that. I'm not sure if any of that's implemented, though, within the Yocto project yet. But if anybody's interested in the Debian package signing, the infrastructure is finally there on the Debian side so that somebody could actually implement it if it has not been. But the package signing is a big deal. We have to be able to know that the package has not been modified to get it done to the device. And the only thing I'll say is that the only real requirement for package signing with any of the package managers is that you've got PGP or GPG on your target device in order to do the validation. So all of the package managers seem to do it their own way, but in the end it's all GPG that does the validation. So it actually makes it really nice for all of us so that we know that we've got a consistent code path no matter what the package manager is. And that's how everybody has decided to do it, which works for me.
Great, thank you. If anybody else has any questions, I would suggest stopping by the Yocto Project booth. The maintainers will be in and out. And thank you for coming. This has been a really interesting BoF.